Why do people become atheists? What is it that brings someone to the place where they say, there is no God, there's no God in the universe? How can they say that? How do they get there? Well, I think there are three main causes, reasons why people become atheists. A lack of evidence. I had a friend, he grew up in a home, both his parents were atheists, they were professors. He was taught from birth, there is no God. So he was ignorant of all the evidence that there was a God. He spent 2.5 years studying the Bible with me, and at the end of that time, he got on his knees and gave his life to the true and living God, and he's followed God the rest of his life. He was just lacking evidence. He was ignorant. Other people become atheists because they're disappointed. Something bad happened to them. They experienced a great trauma. They really wanted something to turn out a certain way, and it didn't turn out that way. So they got mad at God. If God is sovereign, then God should have fixed this. God should have changed that. God should have done this. So they get disappointed with God. So they say, well, there just is no God. If He's not the way I want Him, then there is no God. The third is defiance. It says in Romans chapter 1, and we're going to read this in a minute, that they've suppressed the truth. They know that there's a God, but they've suppressed the truth of God. They're choosing to say there is no God. It's not an intellectual matter for them, really, but it's a matter of the will. And I think that's a primary reason why people become atheists, to the people I've talked to. You talk to them long enough, you realize this is what the issue is. You can say, if I gave you all the evidence and enough evidence to believe, would you give your life to God? And they say no. They still want to do life without God. It's a matter of arrogance. It says in Psalm 10, verse 4, the wicked in his proud countenance, in his pride, does not seek God. God is in none of his thoughts. He has no room for God. His pride, I don't need God. And I've talked to a lot of people like that. Some people, it's just wickedness. It says in Psalm 14, verse 1, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. And if I say there is no God, then they become corrupt. They've done abominable works. There's none that does good. You see, if I say there's no God, there's no accountability. So I can do any wicked thing I want, and it's not wicked because I say it's okay. The third one is idolatry. And this is the main one. If I say there's no God, then I get to be God. It says in Romans chapter 1, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven, the judgment of God is revealed from heaven against all unrighteousness and ungodliness of men who suppress the truth and unrighteousness. Verse 19. Because what may be known of God is revealed in them. For God has shown it to them. There's plenty of evidence. The creation has the Creator's fingerprints all over it. Your conscience has the Creator's fingerprints all over it. Your longing for eternity has the Creator's fingerprints all over it. It says, for since the creation of the world, His invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even His eternal power and His Godhead. So they are without excuse. There's plenty of evidence to believe in God. Because although they knew God, they didn't glorify Him as God. They didn't want Him to be their God. They weren't thankful, but they became futile in their hearts. Their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. And they changed the glory of the incorruptible God, listen, into an image made like a corruptible man. Themselves. Therefore, verse 24, God gave them up to uncleanness. Verse 25, who exchanged the truth of God for the lie and worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator. That's idolatry. And it leads to perversion. It says, therefore God gave them up to uncleanness in the lust of their hearts to dishonor their bodies among themselves. Why is this incredible explosion of homosexuality and sexual perversion? Because when you have enough people going into idolatry, it leads you to perversion. God says if you want to serve, if you want to worship yourselves, worship yourself, but I'm stepping out of the picture. It says, for this reason God gave them up to vile passions. Their women exchanged the natural use for what is against nature. The men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust for one another. Men committing what is shameful and receiving in themselves the penalty of their error. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind to do those things that are not fitting, being filled with all unrighteousness, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, envy, murder, strife, deceit, evil-mindedness. They're whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, violent, proud boasters, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, undiscerning, untrustworthy, unloving, unforgiving, unmerciful, who knowing the righteous judgment of God, and that those who practice such things are deserving of death, not only do the same, but applaud those who practice them. We just had a whole month in our country celebrating homosexuality. That's described right there. That's perversion. It's because of idolatry. It's because people choose not to worship God. Look, there is a God. There's plenty of evidence for God. And He designed the universe, so the only way it really works is if He is in the center. And the only way your life works is if He is your God and you do what He says.